Contention 1 is the NRC to determine protection standards used for radiation contact as well as other harmful emissions that are products of producing nuclear energy. The National Regulatory Commission, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the U.S. Department of Energy base all of their calculations on what is known as the reference or standard man. This character is a 20 to 30-year-old Caucasian male with average status from Western European or North American culture. The use of reference man is the sole standard for regulation requires populations that do not fit the qualities are excluded from protection. Machiani LA. Reference man was attempted to provide a standard set of biological characteristics that can be used to systematize the calculations that are needed in radiation protection. Reference man is defined as being between 20 and 30 years of age, weighing 150 pounds, 5 feet 7 inches in height, with an average temperature from 10 to 20 degrees Celsius, Caucasian, Western European, or North American habitat and custom. This definition leaves out the vast majority of people, including substantial numbers of workers from explicit consideration of radiation protection. The continued use of reference man is poor practice because it does not take into account the greater radiation doses received by some parts of the population as a result from the same environmental conditions. The higher cancer risk per unit of dose they face especially applies to women and children. Even though reference man is taken to be an adult male's 20s, the definition makes no mention of the possibility of man becoming a father, what that might mean in terms of the impacts of the framework of radiation protection regulations. While radiation doses given as calculated in the reference man framework take into account possible hereditary effects, non-cancer reproductive effects are not part of the U.S. regulatory framework for radiation protection. Reference man is currently the basis of many federal regulations and compliance guidelines, including workplace radiation exposures, cleanup of radioactively contaminated sites, and some radionuclides in drinking water, notably alpha radiation emitting transuranic radionuclides. Reference man used by 3 federal agencies: the Environmental Protection Agency, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the Department of Energy. And even though there are statistical representations on women and children, the use of reference man is pervasive in many different energy industries. It's Machiani 08. External doses are still calculated from parameters relating to adult NRC radiation protection regulations using reference panels with minor unsatisfactory adjustment rates. In the case of some external exposure calculations, EPA Federal Guidance Report 13 contains dose conversion factors adjustment in the basic clean air compliance model. Children were specifically excluded from the compliance calculation, maintain consistency with earlier compliance. Special permission needed to deviate from the improved compliance estimation methods. The use of reference man is pervasive radiation protection guidance and compliance, but not uniformly so. Children have long been ignored, even though the science to determine whether or not there be higher doses have long been available. Women are either partially included or not included at all. And including a gender-neutral ideal such as the standard man allows for men what is considered demasculine to privilege over everything that is considered feminine. Cotter 08. They take the actual status of one sex and status quo is desirable universal. One sex has what both sexes should have. This manifests sociological thinking, the idea of the universe contained for something which find actualized in the world which we already live. But the idea that both sexes have one sex and status quo makes equality plays successful in employing past values between the experience of men and women. Positing a gender-neutral universe is likely an impossible project because women and men are or should be allowed to become irreducibly different from one another. The difference between them is deep, but the difference between kinds of stuff is not simply a difference between social statuses or preferences. It's unlike the single abstract model, moral and political life can represent the both. Positing a single universe that couples of both of them is likely to privilege one another. Through no time field for a gender-neutral universe about a drawing particular reference of existing symbols to articulate our existing legal configurations already privileged men. Thus, so gender neutral universe is likely to unfairly privileged and masculine. And we call for naturalized discrimination. The use of reference man allows for gender discrimination is inherent in the language society uses to overcome these problems. People must understand sexism, pervasiveness, and subtlety. Otherwise, power, discursive discrimination is self-regulated and essentially because of insurability. Sorrow 7. 2 important insights of feminicide and the recognition of the difference in diversity among women and men, which call for undertaking historical and culturally continuing analysis, gender, sex, and the prevalence and subtle discussion from our work in modern power many societies. For feminicide and undertake continuing analysis of the oppression of women and feminist variety and monotonous similarity between critical discourse, analytic perspectives, useful complement the concept of modern power. The view of power relations is not as modern power study because mostly projects based on internalization of gender norms act out routinely in text and talk in everyday life. Relation to power dominance can be discursively resisting, counters resistant, and a dynamic struggle of security and challenging the interest to take objects by feminist practices, sexist representations, the media, religious recycling of these same images dressed up in seemingly inoffensive periodic ways. And a feminist critical discourse is key to redefine gender rhetorical structures such as practice enables us to see the relationship between social structure and discursive practice. When one is able to understand the influence the language has on social things, they are better able to understand how to destruct oppressive systems and dominant systems for their social locations. R7. In terms of feminism and CDA in particular, however, there's actually much overlap in terms of social and emancipatory goals. Feminist CDA has an advantage of operating at the outside of the politically invested explanatory program of discourse analysis. Feminist discourse scholars can learn much about the interconnection between the particularities of discursive structures and point in various forms of social inequality, oppression, and feedback, and critical feminist analysis and strategies for social change. Feminist CDA is a political perspective on generally concerned demystifying the interrelationship of gender boundaries, ideology, and discourse to applicable text, a study of text and talking, which offers a corrective approach to itself as one legalistic vote over another. And including a feminist discourse analysis must be critical self-reflexivity. Reflexivity is key to any sort of feminist agenda. This realization is a crucial first step in undermining the institution that perpetuates such practices. R7. A critical focus on reflexivity must be an important facet of the practice of feminist CDA. Reflexivity is manifest in institutional practices with implication of possibilities of change the social parts of the personal attitudes and practice of the interest. It needs to be ongoing critical self-reflexivity, one feminist key on achieving radical transformation of gender social structures. The problem is not so much the case of appropriating feminism merely for commercial gain, but such appropriation entails a subversion of feminism's political force, rendering it instead only assigned value. Recruitment reflexivity, however, is not limited to consumers, also used for purposes persuasive fact by governments and other institutions may be obliged to acknowledge of progressive discourse for pragmatic reason for desire to project and enlighten itself, and may only superficially attend to them. And discursive representations matter with people able to find the world with their words and only shape themselves with the social institution and interaction they live with, and discourse effectively controls limits what can be discussed in false faith enables so too. Discourse limits may discuss and heard in political context, not as tied to particular organization dynamics of gender, race, class, and region, among other structures of inequality shape whose voice are heard in the policy debates, while social movement context and various political constituencies whose use community control frame for contradictory purposes, and say how movement actors lose control of the movement frame over time. And working through established institutions inevitably co-ops any feminist movement which must prefer a feminist CDA when attempt to change the way language functions as R7. The ultimate goal of radical social transformation and discourse critique of the failing research and starts to step in the direction of little forms policies that are inadequate and can be co-opted by the dominant structures. The equality from this perspective applies to the same as the has already said, but men, instead of a radical shift, women are required to fit in prevailing intersectional structures. The dominant liberal ideology assumes the same as well women, allows middle class heterosexual white women, Western white women to represent their partial space of the universe, who share all with their right and north and material conditions, and even non-Western, non-white, lesbian, disabled, and poor women around the globe. Contention 2, why debate? Much like the NRC, debate idolizes a standard man. Our community holds up to competitors a standard that determines how speaking points are allocated, who wins and who loses, and what a good debater acts like and looks and debates like. This reference point we use is based on masculine traits such as dominating across like speaking loudly, quickly, and with authority, priorities, facts, and objective knowledge over personal experience. Eisenberg, no date. Performing these characteristics is necessary with a necessity when debates less aggressive or assertive debater receive lower speaker points. If you're too passive, too quiet, it's soft, you're not ready for the battle, you will lose, you will quit. It's really about being able to participate in very, very culturally masculine space. The culture of competition, time, technical skills in debate, being able to talk, speak fast, talk loud, and other performances associated with masculinity and establish expectations for how people should be performing. All our goals become more assertive. It feels like you must change a large part of our identity in this stage for competitive success. This unspoken cultural aspect of competition is so invisible, internalized, normalized by debaters. Maybe it's difficult to see how these notions of masculinity actually manifest themselves in the back of the room, performing aspects of masculinity in bad ways as a way to be able to manage some of these barriers. Just a posture word to be accepted, got more attention to social movement or perform masculinity. And we must focus on how language shapes our perception. Debaters, people, and sometimes we want to make change in the real world can change our community. Language not merely some to transmit information rather than incredibly powerful meaning so much as inevitably has real political material consequences. Important to examine discourse of debate and language discourse of means that we as a community debate discourse unthinking plain and academic debate is not acceptable anymore for us to go along with those. Some students who say themselves out of complacency produces that frustration may not be able to change what we change our community and fail to give up the only real power we have. And feminist academic communities such as debate must work in multiple ways to gain greater acceptance, specifically promotion of research practices like the 1AC, that's the atomic and fundamental debate. Women and men must work to continue toward greater acceptance of feminist research and approaches stats presentation arguing that break with traditional norms, metaphors, and private national women unity includes the development of hybrid style academic discourse, not only of alternative rhetorical strategies but in traditional publications and acceptance of non-traditional qualitative research. And the world is no more than descriptions of them. There are no truth or false in the world, solely what people say is true and changes with the changing times. But because language is not static, changing one's vocabulary can create personal social change, otherwise one will be left with patriarchal, naturalized language. Renninger and Sauer 3. Humans create truth through language, the functions, the mechanisms they use to explore and understand themselves and the world around them. Choose, therefore, continues to have the capacity to change with humans. Their descriptions of the world they change over time and better suit their needs. People create whatever we call final vocabulary that use to justify the actions and beliefs. We use the vocabulary to share the meaning, how we think about the world around us. Due to limitations, language never actually generate a description of what fully represents reality. Use of patriarchal language erodes women's sense of themselves. Daily experience, we know it takes words such as feminine, unfeminine, womanly, unwomanly, recognize how certain words, particularly those are supposed to name us, not only fail to express but also destroy our identity. Using intense language and traditional rhetorical methods and ideas ensure the continuation of the existing post-social order process.
How women and people who are feminine or feminized are excluded from the political realm and discussion about policymaking is indeed bad.
Okay. Okay, so is this ultimately a criticism of nuclear siting? Is that completely separate from your criticism of the debate community, or is this ultimately going to boil down to a criticism of the debate community?
The 1AC is two parts. First is the NRC's protection standards for radiation, which is the standard or reference man. That's not necessarily citing problems. Citing goes into it, but it's just the protection standards as a generic topic and what the NRC, the EPA, and the DOE all use to determine these standards. The second part is the debate community. I'm not sure what you mean by, is it just going to boil down to that? Because we have impacts predicated on, or we have impacts on both flows. So I guess it just depends on what the like the debate ends up being.
Okay. You talk about changing the community to adopt a more feminist ideology, correct? I think that the use of masculine ideologies in debate is
It's not
problematic.
necessarily, like, I think our criticism is more like acceptance of like feminist modes of discussion rather than just like ideologies.
Okay, do you think that this addresses privilege in debate?
Most certainly, like, we think this addresses masculine privilege in debate.
Okay, so masculine privilege.
Like, don't hold us to only masculine, but like
So how do you solve for like other forms of privilege?
I think in our Lazaro 7, the last piece of evidence, it talks about how like we need to use feminists to be able to engage with like all types of women, not just like the white middle class Western women that like seem to dominate.
The last Lazar evidence
The last piece
in your first
in
contention?
first contention, yes.
Okay.
And middle class heterosexual Western white women, we don't want like to focus on that. I think all like
So this is like a step in the right direction type thing?
yes.
So like, but I mean like, as far as like on both flows, right, like especially in the debate flow, like if you're discussing feminist rhetoric and how does that address privilege for like what is considered the, I guess, standard for debate? Like how does your affirmative work to like fight that privilege?
Our affirmative. Can we finish that?
That's fine.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know.
We're not taking
Don't
it
need to
though,
take it.
so.
Is
It's
this a jump drive?
fine. Nope, that's my mouse.
Oh, my bad. Can I see a jump drive, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Just want to give you this.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Is everyone ready? Oh, so it's gonna be 3 off. Our recommendation, the affirmative should have to depend on actualize the United States federal government and there's no, that is no much included. Desirable the affirmative violates resolve means to enact by law this 40-60 word resolve is to express an opinion or by resolution or protest was resolved by the legislator and the U.S. United States federal government refers to the actual government black officers and their the U.S. government consists of the executive, legislative, and judicial branches in addition to the administrative agencies and should implies obligation actions to minimum question or two the use of preliminary function express obligation B violation of the act does not depend the United States federal government action if the CEDA -1 without limits to debate becomes impossible T is jurisdiction voting issue to decide which behavior they must recognize the role of agreement of political contest. This is the starting condition of the debate. We cannot argue about something if we cannot agree on the topic in terms of argument. One cannot have an argument about euthanasia with someone who thinks with someone who thinks euthanasia is a musical group contesting English. There's lack of agreement or communication about what is being contesting an idea presumes some agreement about what the idea is and how one might go about contesting it. And two, roles of negative interpretation is clear. There's no function of negative team. We must prove the desirability of the advocacy. If there's no predictable limit on what the affirmative can do, the negative is excluded from the debate. We become passive. Subject to presentation, our interpretation is the least exclusion because it provides place to debate over negative teams and free process impact is the only academic form where we get education based on class method competition. We are able to prepare and advance affirmatives around the comes to 2-hour conference presentation about whether whatever book or article they are reading this education outweighs any concept specific education because A, you get concept specific education in the uniform and B, without critical thinking skills developed in class competition. We can't effectively act on concept specific philosophies of English and level 7 suicide debate. The services of bulwark against fundamentalism several voices reshaping national dialogue on homeland security have come from They hate to observe this lead plaintiff counsel and hate mode challenge the enemy combat definition the imprint of this debate training is evident in the tribal Cato's interventions which are characterized by the people's research argumentation and commitment to democratic principles. Cato 3 counsel most important preparation for my career came experience as a member of the loyal debate team. The robust understanding of the switch side technique will help prevent misappropriation of the technique to bolster suspect homeland security policies. The threats to absolution or refuse will be classified as with us or against us, embracing the intellectual experimentation or reflexivity of the face of fundamentalist man. See, without class-based education, we are likely to come to the wrong conclusions about the content because we won't see both sides. Therefore, if responsibility, all aspects are uncertain, unpredictable, advocacies are not subject to the type of rigorous scrutiny and testing that is required for a claim to be granted. If their claims are not predictable, it means they are not subject to rigorous testing. It should not be treated as true. You cannot evaluate the validity validity of their arguments until you conclude that it's topical because non-local advocacies are not subject to the same amount of scrutiny and testing. This means that the act can only claim offense for their interpretation, not from the value of 1AC, since 1AC has not been established through rigorous debate and five-side debate on the topic is uniquely important. It allows for debate to become better, active and critical, and increases critical thinking. This is the big United States 89. Not only to be research peers to generate the advocacy, debaters will switch sides according to research, research from both sides argument actually creates stronger advocacy. Not only do debaters both learn about sides of an argument, so they defend their positions, they also learn about the nuances of each position. And six, this debate about competing interpretations. They must have substantial interpretation of debate that includes their affirmative, or they should lose if their interpretation provides no one to be affirmative action. It doesn't matter because we have good arguments against their because they can't provide an interpretation that would allow for their act to protect good predictable debates in the future and next office. The only ethical demand available to modern politics is the state and establish the demand for the end of America itself. This cry for an ability of slave ships to make churning the vertical of the constructive genocide exposes the grammar of the affirmative call for larger institutional access to fundamental fortification of white settler and slave master civil society by its diverse focus on the ethicality of policies and practices of the U.S. and United States imposed to the priority question is very existence. The silence of affirmatives, substantive logic renders them unaccountable to the revolutionary political ontology of redness and blackness, and thereby sets the stage for various dramas of conflictual relationships, i.e. class struggle, gender conflict, immigrant rights, etc., that are made possible by the antagonism between settler and savage master and slave. This will intend the grammar of their demands is the only ethical grammar available for modern politics to draw attention to the violence that underwrites the modern world's capacity to exist. What are we debating a world that responds to the most lucid enunciation of ethics of violence? Give turtle island back to the savage, give itself back to the slave. Two simple sentences in the structure of U.S. and global antagonism will be dismantled from there. We could busy ourselves with conflicts such as the class struggle, gender conflict, immigrants rights, racial radicalism, progressive not to make a convincing case with the U.S. was an ethical formation, blackness, range post, the question buried in the race of young black panthers, I am warriors and black liberation army soldiers and prisoners. So many of them have been rotting. It is still possible for a dream of unfederal settlement of the slave destruction. The neoliberalism with the black face is neither the index of a revolutionary advance nor the end of anti-blackness is a constituent element of U.S. antagonism. When we speak the grammar, when we speak, our grammar goes unspoken. The grammar of the ontology of suffering on the rights political discourse elaborate in relation to radical action structures of ontological suffering, standard action rather than conflictual relation. And while we act like the slavery is far from the abstraction of the lived reality of blackness, recourses to sociological empirics of suffering already codifies the category of exploitation as the base grammar for suffering, ignoring the gratuitousness of anti-black violence and ensuring the call for more public policy as the limited point of our revolutionary advances. This leads the way in which civil society is parasitic on the middle passage, and thus how humanity itself can only be constituted in opposition to the fundamentally anti-human position of the slave. It is this legitimate economy of anti-blackness which the existing condition of the possibility for violence in the world is what it should intend. Why? After civil rights movement, do I insist on positioning the operational analytics that appears to be dichotomous comparing master slave to nothing? Remotely approaches claims we made on the scene has come to pass through police brutality, mass incarceration, segregating substandard schools and housing, astronomical rates of HIV infection, and the threat of being turned away in mass, and the polls to constitute the lived experience of black life empirically based rejoinders would lead us in the wrong direction. We would find ourselves on no solid ground, which would only mystify the question of those facts, and empirical marketable change will be heard on their head with more of the same underlying such as downward spiral of political science and public policy debaters would be very rude for trying to call into question the grammar of suffering known as exploitation, whereby subjective disposition is where I once the plaintiff work was removed from slavery proposition of the state of civil society is the last enough to complete an mandatory project for black position disintegrates the imaginary and still state and civil society is parasitic on the middle passage, and the slave is not the labor but anti-human against which humanity maintains its coherence personally over to gratuitous violence and void of kinship structures. And the freedom is an illusion created by the shackles of society. We must burn when they see to the ground, despair on fire. What is to be done when the slaves rose up? They burned everything because everything was against them. The entire order that it was their lot to follow, leave nothing white behind. 2 centuries time God gave no the rainbow sign, no more water, the fire next. And if no more water, fire next. Unfortunately, the only burned everything and hated the therefore fighting across the water. So it's a great tragedy. The United States burns the entire world with death, so the slaves plus if they would be free when the entire world safe again. As death, there is no progress from the slave version through progress. There is no up from slavery. There is only conditions of freedom. The slave can perfect itself by freely choosing to bow. The slave finds its way back only by burning down every connotation. The only thing that the living are not free to be is dead. The slave must be trained to follow the call. It's not a call. The slave must become dead, and life will not change for the better. After an assault on the establishment, that does not mean we will live or to enjoy the fruits of the revolution, but it does mean that we should pursue revolutionary suicide. because death is inevitable, and it's the only one worth pursuing. This is Newton-73 connected to reactionary suicide, although even more degrading than spiritual death has been experienced with numerous black people in the United States. But villains have ceased despite the forms of oppression and drink their blood. The common attitude has long been if man rises against the power and the speed. As the great United States will not survive the weakness that many blacks have been driven to the death of the spirit. I do not think that the life will change for the better without the assault of the establishment. It's better to oppose forces that were driving to self-murder than to endure them. This is the least a possibility of changing the intolerable conditions. Revolutionary suicide does not mean the death wish. Such strong desire to live in hope, humanity, dignity, existence without them is possible. And if our alternative leads to violent revolution, that most definitely solves the enemy culture has established government existence because of its ability to maintain order. Our aim is to stop the life cycle of the enemy culture and replace it with our own revolutionary culture. This can be done by creating disorder. The normal process will be slowed by the establishment. Trunks, tanks, troops, moving the cities, arteries. Each one of the opposition will tank shells fired because the ability of the establishment to produce another tank shells. The cities of fascist USA will hide a guerrilla army and other element exists that have made a guerrilla warfare and its classic style an invincible weapon, and they will be even more successful in built up urban American conditions working against the establishment status. The only mentality they block the over on fixed systemized idea that conflict completely with a real reality speaking for another factor is time. The establishment forces cannot survive prolonged unrest that is steadily building. There is no possibility of establishment government ever overcoming the determined internal enemy and their cost for real wars, just loss of the ongoing living apocalypse of people of color. This Rodriguez and ABR witnessing. Oh, okay. Skip that color. And policies is only going to come after our radical abolition pedagogy starts to go into effect. As Rodriguez intend. There's no defensible pedagogical position other than abolitionists will thrive in a time defined by willingness to eliminate and neutralize populations through institutional violence. It's better to understand why abolitionist practices is pedagogical with and against the system which occurs while it is conceivable that in future moments abolitionist practice can focus on public policy. The present moment clearly demands a convening radical pedagogical industries have been building practices that are the precondition of authentic social transformations. The prison and industrial complexes genocidal the school regime cannot accommodate.
Reasons to vote negative, like within the framework of theory arguments.
There are a couple reasons.
I have a question. What is this revolutionary suicide that your Newton evidence talks about?
Which question should I answer first?
That one.
Okay. Yeah. Wait, where is it? Let me go to the card. Which card are you talking about?
The Newton card, it's like will not change.
Oh, yeah. It just means that like we should be actively pursuing like this revolution or this idea of like burning down these ideologies that have consistently.
What does that entail? What does it mean to burn down an ideology?
Well, I mean, not like. I guess burn down, yeah, but fight against it like proactively in terms of like.
So when the alternative text is to vote neg to burn the 1AC to the ground, what does that mean?
It means we have to destroy everything and
Destroy
start
everything.
over from new. Right now, like the way that the structures are set up, there's no way
How is
for people of color to ever achieve the same status as white people.
is your evidence like what is it talking about?
What do you mean?
Like what is the realm in which like your evidence is criticizing? Like is it the political
Modern.
realm? Is it like culture as a system? Is it interpersonal interactions?
It's
Political.
The political realm?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, I guess we can argue.
So what does the alternative do for the debate community?
It changes the debate community because it's
How?
not like the cards are pretty specific. The cards talk about how we should just destroy everything. Everything gets destroyed to start
So
over.
we should destroy the debate community?
Yeah, we're gonna destroy it. Yeah, because there's no way your 1AC does not. Your 1AC is an example of how like there are certain privileges that are allotted to some debaters, and that should be dismantled completely because because you may think that that's fair or just, but it doesn't answer back the privilege that you have as a white debater, also as a male, or her as a female debater, in terms of me being the disenfranchised African American in this room, or my partner being a disenfranchised individual. It never addresses that, and so the only way to actually bring about real change and to address privilege or any type of feminism framework is to first dismantle everything, to burn it to the ground in the most, not literal sense, but in the most aggressive sense. And if that means that we have to sacrifice ourselves in order to bring out that revolution,
So we
yeah,
should
so
literally-
be it.
Like, I'm just trying to figure out what it means.
I have a quick question. You skipped this Rodriguez card.
Yeah,
There are calls to prevent wars, and you got this policy is only going.
yeah.
Okay, on framework, you say we come to the wrong conclusions, so we don't have like a policy like framing. What are the wrong conclusions that our affirmative comes to?
I mean, any conclusion where we're not, like, if we don't have a starting point where we can all agree, then we're gonna be throwing random things and talking for like 2 hours about nothing that is actually, like, I don't know.
And then the criticism. Okay, everyone good?
One we meet in the resolution is a unique starting point to evaluate the patriarchal rhetoric surrounding policymaking, extend the Bjork evidence from the 1AC. When we have the opportunity to change how our activity functions, we need to do so. Debaters, coaches, and judges all must understand how the language of the use does violence to others. If we fail to do so, we forfeit the only power that we have. And 2, counter-information, the affirmative must be germane to the resolution. And 3, we're debatable. A, we are predictable feminists. CDA has been an argument and debate for the last decade. You should have answers to it, being prepared to debate the germane of his functional the same as debating a new F. And B, we are ready for debate. Best teams have shown that it's best to have generic strategies to different kinds of chaos and Northwestern Dartmouth and every proof you read framework because of choice in relationship to difference, not because you don't have ground. We lead to better debating. And C, we made our counter-interpretation. We are germane to the resolution by critically analyzing the NRC's regulation standards, meaning we can learn all about policies and processes surrounding it, which is central to the topic. We make nuclear better with an FCDA and are a positive contribution, and we provide sufficient ground. You can read CAPK must use institutions. Any argument against feminism discourse focus bad because we defend the changing policy making. You can say the status quo policy making is good. Policymakers have to defend their positions against FCDA. You don't have answers. And 4, we are policy corrected. We are necessary purpose because without a feminist CDA, policymaking will inevitably be patriarchal and exclusionary. That's the 1AC Naples and Missourians. And 5, this year's topic is inherently masculine. It's debate surrounding any kind of nuclear power. We'll use the gender language that we see in this community. The only way that we will be able to avoid the impacts of cases to address the language that we use. Debate is communicative activity. Thought and language are tools for action. If our fundamental discourse is flawed, we must address it. Otherwise, we risk re-entrenching failed policymaking. Our discourse shapes reality because of 1AC rhetoric and Sour's evidence. And 6, limiting discussion of policymaking in Washington, D.C. forecloses the opportunity to view everyday interactions and individual choices as political discontally. And 2K. If you define democracy only as governance, then the democratic state can only become a mode of collective action and consonant with individual and constituency freedoms. 1, you imagine democracy as in which constituencies have a significant hand in modeling the negotiation of the democratic ethos, when it becomes very pertinent as one of the relations between resident with reciprocal appreciation of elements of contestability and the fundamentals of being the possibilities of being begin to glow, and research this of the subcomic and the final evidence is specific to acceptance of alternative styles of research and is what will lead to a blossoming of our activity. Otherwise, we will force out people in arguments that are not considered rational and reason. This is going to answer their limits. This is going to answer their limits argument and the debate community structure. This is what makes a beautiful family community based on linguistic commonality. As our Shively evidence talks about, destroys difference. Their framework requires homogeneity and the destruction of all perspectives that are deemed outside of this C code in 2K. President communication is himself can participate in the rational conversation in respect of the differences stated in communication fails to acknowledge the intermittency and multiplicity of meaning and all speech and writing that many groups or so to speak in discourse that are unintelligible to the majority minority groups in discourse are frequently ignored or excluded from political discussion and decision making because they do not adopt the dominant modes of authoritative and rational conversation that is homogeneity and transparency. And skip the next card. They say that this is the wrong form, but that's a terrible understanding of what debate is. The Bjork evidence from the 1AC is very specific to when we are able to change the debate community and the practices that the Eisenberg evidence talks about. We need to do so. They say switch side, but the idea that there are only 2 sides to the resolution and only one interpretation is flawed. The resolution is more of a meeting place for different ideas. Point of contingency for difference viewing the resolution is negative to us. It's the same conception used in contemporary politics that there are only 2 parties, Republican or Democrat. This kind of thing is what allows exclusion from the political realm. That's enables evidence. And switch side is bad for reasons. Harrigan 1117. SSC presumes debate is pedagogical bullpen, which undermines the activities potential for radical change. Students and hold you can't know anything until you debate both sides of the norm. The vast multiple lived experience that underwrites scientific specific links about identity to the norm of SSC and public construction mandating USFG action. Realize I don't believe that USFG action is a locus for change when in reality and history it is produced the opposite of marginalized individual perspectives to local and to their own account for these specific conditions of black participation. SSC contributes to an ethical fashioning of subjects whose willingness to step outside of the self and speak against outward to belief is that it is attacked by an American exceptionalism. Debate becomes a cultural technology that facilitates the expansion of neoliberal violence. Benefits are extremely minimal and entirely solved by requiring students to thoroughly research but on behalf of the positions that they do not believe defenders of SSC. Assert that it promotes tolerance, argument, pluralism, and informative arguments, but those are all aspects of good debate accomplished through rigorous research and familiarity with claims of opponents and preparation. On to the case. Then we're not talking about the debate contention is going to be a mistake at the end of the round. The Eisenberg evidence is very specific to how the standard man is something that is used in the is used and idolized in the debate community. This is one thing that we are actually able to change. The Bjork evidence as well as the Lazar evidence from the YC both talk about how when we are self-reflexive about how we participate in the community, we can change that. The alternative is not going to actually spill over into other rounds, but our discussion of the rhetoric that we use in the debate community, as discussed on the framework change, is something that we can actually change. And the idea that there is a standard man, which is what the Eisenberg evidence talks about, is something that we can do and something that we can change to help it so that the feminized people in the debate community can have a voice and be able to participate in something that something that they want to do. On to the case. The role of the ballot should be whichever team best solves a positive relationship to difference in debate. And in the political realm, our methodology is important. This debate is fundamentally an argument about competing methodologies, and we are proposing that any kind of embellishment or when I see or Renner and Sowards evidence is indicative of the fact that the way that we relate to the world and our bodies is predicated on discourse make them delineate the distinction between how discourse does not shape the relationship that we have to our bodies and social locations. This means that the one I see is going to be able to solve for the impacts of criticism and from both of this is able to solve best because the Lazar evidence from the one I see says that feminist critical discourse analysis allows us to understand different forms of oppression. We can solve the feminist CD as comparative understands the differences between different forms of oppression. This is Lazar and 7. The task of feminist CD is to examine how power dominance are discursively producing and kind of resistant in variety of ways through textual representation. I have gendered social practices, even though women are subordinate to defend structurally and patriarchal gender or the intersection of gender with other systems, power based on race, ethnicity, social class, sexual orientation, age, culture, and geography means that gender oppression is neither materially experienced nor discursively enacted in the same way for women. However, there is a need for feminist political action to be inflicted by a specificity, cultural, historical, and institutional purpose, and contextualized in terms of women's complexity and social identities. Feminicity would suggest a perspective that is implicitly compared rather than universalizing an attempt to the discursive aspects of the forms of oppression and interest over which divine as well as unite groups of women, and the prioritization of race is problematic. Different bodies experience oppression in many different ways, and boxing these bodies into a single prescriptive type ignores the ways social positions determine that different experiences. The intersectionalities of the one I see is the only thing that will be able to overcome the prioritization of the one I see. And skip the next card. Whiteness intersects all of the unknowable modes of oppression, such as masculinity. We must use resistance to them all. This is row and 5. Whiteness intersects with the normalizing discourse. Each belonging each of these intersections needs more adequate attention in order to be more adequately mapped the production of normative privilege and how it wields power to heal subjects and to hegemonic forms of belonging and visibility undermines our agency. We cannot alter that which we cannot see, and their methodology is flawed. Their focus on social death disempowers social agency and pushes us away from political activism. We should recognize that we live in a world where culture creates opportunities for us to find empowerment, and we should reject the notion that oppression is a form of social death. This is Brandon in 9. The basic result of such a definition is slaves of agency. I manifestly said slaves had agency, and one need look no further than the continuous surveillance and occasional revolutions towards from the new world slavery to see this. Brown wants to retell the story the story considered from the perspective of what we might call the micropolitics of every life. It is plainly wrong to see Caribbeans as without culture in the sense of without resources or community practices. Many of what are better seen as tools to be used than as possessions to be lesser. There are somewhat separable issues here. First, it's the methodological question of how one should think about culture and agency. Then there's the more empirical question of the admissibility and ultimate and utility of the notion of social death. In the study of slave systems, they look at the same thing. And the one sees the struggle for communities fragile and fleeting about real. The other sees the derealizing force derealizing force of commodity fetishism and a tone of high moralism allows a historical discourse to disintegrate human being. And gender neutrality is that we must address the structures of patriarchy if we ever hope to be out of such an oppressive system. The alternative ignores the ways in which masculine dominance is perpetuated and will inevitably reproduce the impacts of one I see to Bergerac in 85. The analysis of various systems of oppression is necessary. Women are marked probably by their post husbands, because women's is never anything but the locus of more or less competitive fictions between men and including the competition for the possession of earth and for women to undertake tactics to support themselves to social status that compels recognition.
Are you open for questions?
Yeah.
Just a quick question. You talked about how like your feminist rhetoric is key to understand like all forms of social movement. Like, how?
The Lazar evidence is very specific to,
Did you just read this Lazar evidence?
there's the Lazar evidence in the 1AC,
Okay.
as well as the Lazar evidence that is on the K. The Lazar evidence that's on the K is very specific to feminist critical discourse analysis, being able to understand the intersectionality of different kinds of oppression, because everyone
So-
is implicated in
So,
power structures differently based on their social
okay, so
location.
basically what I get from this card is
Okay.
like, we can play oppression Olympics and whoever comes out victorious
No,
is the discourse that we should use.
no,
Because
that's
I don't
not what this
understand,
says.
I don't understand how feminist rhetoric allows you to understand the discussion of like the black body. Like, how does that work?
Well, it's because the Lazar evidence is very specific from the 1AC as to self-reflexivity being a mode of solvency for these gender terms that are used and recognition of these gender terms. The only way that we are going to be able to overcome any kind of social power structure is if we look at individual
So the
social locations,
recognition,
because
the
people are
recognition of
implicated in power
gen-
structures
okay, so
differently.
the reflection of gender terms helps identify with blackness and redness. How?
Well, yeah, the Makajani, I don't know how to say his name.
It's fine.
Makajani evidence from the 1AC is specific to the NRC standard of the standard man
Mhm.
only fits the Western European, Caucasian, or Northern
Exactly.
American person.
And your affirmative affirms feminist discourse,
Yes,
right?
we affirm
But
a feminist discourse analysis, but this
a
is
feminist-
able to overcome the problems with the racist assumptions of this standard that is used.
Real
How?
quick, did you have any indicts of violence?
Index of violence on the criticism?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
The social death, there's like a social death indict, that's the random card.
Okay. How does
it's
this
a
spill
criticism
over
of the
into, how does
methodology.
this spill over into the debate community? Like, what role
What?
does the judge play? Like, this feminist discourse out of the 1AC, like, how does that?
Okay, the Bjork evidence from the 1AC is very specific to when we are presented with a problem in our community, we have to address it. Otherwise, we forfeit the only power that we have. When we are able to identify these terms being used and the way that the standard man is idolized in debate
Mhm.
and teach other people in the debate community about them round by round, that's the kind of recognition that the Lazar evidence from the first contention talks about.
Mhm.
Recognition of these problems is key to being able to understand how we can be self-reflexive about the kind of practices that we endorse with the Eisenberg evidence and the kind of language that we use with the first contention.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
What's after the new sheet, sorry?
The K. tax nuclear power plants should be built in high socioeconomic areas. The distance between legitimate and illegitimate decision makers heightens the threat of nuclear holocaust. It is only by beginning to heal the racism inherent in the process, like citing nuclear power plants, that we can begin to open up the space for more diverse wisdom to ease tensions. This is Anthony in 95. Nuclear weapons are tools of conquering violent cultural racism at domestic levels, heightens the potential vulnerability and miscalculation surrounding nuclear proliferation. People of color have had any role in debate, development, or decision-making. The concentration of nuclear power in the hands of a Eurocentric technological elite paranoid about the aims and aspirations of the majority of the world's population. People of color magnifies the potential for a global disaster. The great and growing gulf of human communication between the rich and poor multiplies the potential agonism that could result in planetary holocaust. And the nuclear industry drives siting decisions. Upper socioeconomic neighborhoods cause too much political trouble and land is too expensive. The desire for an easy and efficient process papers over the violence done to low-income and minority communities when risky technology is placed in their neighborhoods without their involvement. This is Foster 98. Conventional industry wisdom counsels private companies to target sites that are in neighborhoods least likely to express opposition. Poorly educated and lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, the political process rarely takes the concerns of such communities seriously, and decision makers often ignore them altogether. Siting process begins with the private sector choosing an appropriate site for the location of a proposed facility, but the proposed location of the hazardous white upper socioeconomic neighborhood often engenders strong public opposition. There is a limited supply of land on which to site such facilities. When the siting process is neutral towards structural inequalities, it perpetuates injustice of the current social structure. And advocating building nuclear plants in privileged areas places us in the role to become the writer activist, opening up space for disenfranchised communities to resist and be heard. This is Nixon in 11. An era of imperial overreach has brought to the crisis a consensus ideology premised on globalizing the free market through militarization, privatization, deregulation, optional corporate self-policing, the undertaxation of the super wealthy. Distancing mechanisms include the rhetorical gulf between development and the grand planetary dream premised on a growth-driven consumption and socio-environmental fallout. The geographical distance between the market force has to an almost occult degree of production has become disaggregated from consumption. Macer as priorities in economic order premised on acute inequities of portability of commodities, factories, jobs, people, and environment itself. Writer activists may thereby expose injustices. A writer activist can help strive to advance the causes of those who believe in turbo-capitalism's assaults onto the K. First of all, they say permutation. However, this is hijacking this ad. Their attempt to capture and redirect our alternative is tantamount to Kennedy involving himself with the civil rights movement so that he could internally commandeer resistance groups to strip out everything posed as an actual threat to the interests of the white elites. Just like Martin Luther King in his later years, our alternative will be violently suppressed, and the movement is no longer aligned with their model of comfortable, peaceful, white-friendly resistance. A sovereign and violently oppositional resistance movement is key to alternative solvency. This is Getterloose in 2007. Absent from the white consciousness, the least influential to black people is Malcolm X scared the white man to death, scared to death the power structure in Washington, D.C. to death. Kennedy said all endorsed it. They took over and it lost its militancy. They controlled it so tight that those Negroes came to hit town when where to stop, what signs to carry, what songs to sing, which speech they could make, when speech they couldn't make it. Told them to get out of town by sundown. Demonstrators who received pre-made protest signs with government-approved slogans. The speeches of several protest leaders were censored to take out threats of armed struggle. The whole crowd was told to leave as soon as possible. Martin Luther King Jr. was allowed his celebrity until he became a more radical voice of anti-capitalism revolution and advocate solidarity with the armed struggle of the Vietnamese white activists assassinating and assist the state in assassinating Malcolm X. They performed the cleaner half of the job in disappearing, erasing him from memory. Mark the card. Mark the card there, and then go down to whenever white pacifists concern themselves with the cause that affects people of color, resistors among the affected people of color do not conform to the particular definition of nonviolent in use. The white activists place themselves as the teachers and guides, creating a dynamic that is remarkably colonial. And the affirmative neatly packages black resistance through various logics of whiteness, like political participation, marketing rights, ensuring co-option, and closing off the radical ethical possibilities of authentic abolitionism. This is Hush in 08, sorry. Black abolitionists staged powerful struggles from black institutions. It did not necessarily depend on liberal precepts about law or market participation. Black speakers, organizers, and writers who fit the needs of the white abolitionist movement. The promises of freedom white abolitionists were offered committed to restoring democratic ideals, but by preserving the property of interests of white national, the cultures of abolitionists upheld plantation fantasies and protected white privilege while advocating the end of slavery. Liberal transformation from human rights to property rights is a recurring pattern. The conditions of inclusion through the cultural conformity to the liberal ideas of the democratic project from cultural front reproduce the terms of exclusion, the refused alternative imaginaries for framework. And they may try and say that these cards are predicated off of government involvement. However, we would say that their type of framing of the way that we should address oppression, it necessarily means that they hijack the the Wilderson movement, the violent abolitionists. Their Lazar card specifically says that their movement will co-opt other movements. Like, read the card, it says that. That's probably a pretty bad way to approach that. They also try to say that it's not mutually exclusive. However, it's not a question of mutually exclusive, it's a question of a priori. Go down to, violence is the only way to spur a large-scale political movement for our movement. This is Gilderloos in 07. The violence that alienates people is false, blatantly false wars win the support of at least half the population, showing this people's love for the enemy is alienating. Pacifism is also alienating to the lower middle-class of lower-class Americans. Who cares if the middle and upper classes are alienated by violence? They support violence all the time, whether it is strike-breaking, police brutality, prisons, war, sanctions, or a capital punishment. What they really oppose is violence directed at dislodging them and their privileges, fighting for survival, win sympathy. But when a mass escape Gateford prison turned into a hostage situation, attention was paid to the horrible conditions of the Pennsylvania's prison. In the Zapatistas in 94, the Appalachian miners in 21, people humanize themselves when they take up arms to fight against oppression. And the affirmative neatly packages black resistance through various logics of whiteness. No, I think I read that. Okay. Okay, their attempt to say we can be anti-racist too co-ops our images of suffering and as an advertisement used to guilt trip people into backing their own political agenda, thus continuing the fungibility of the black body and calcifying the white supremacy. This is Mandel in 2008. The protection of white privilege by whites through concessions perpetuate the legal status quo interests that converge to offer blacks some sort of concession for a clear benefit of the nation. Any gains made by blacks results as a momentary convergence will be abrogated at the point that policymakers fear the remedial policies threatening the status of whites. Brown versus Board of Education served to quash black outrage over Jim Crow with a largely symbolic reform that did nothing to undermine the dominant white power structure but made further advocacy for real change politically impossible. And the perm is nothing more than a supremacist, white supremacist multiculturalism. It is an attempt to take the alien body presence and integrate it into the localities of whiteness. This inclusion of the other is simply another way in which white hegemony makes minorities take on the white identity, even if it is the so-called enemy population. This multiculturalist white supremacy is crucial to the project of white supremacist globality. This is Rodriguez in 09. This is within the confines of Homeland Security as the white supremacist territoriality. That multiculturalism is recognized as a fact of life, an empirical feature of the world that is inescapable and unavoidable. These alien bodies and subjects whose movements suggest the possibility of disruption, disarticulation become objects of discrete discursive labor as well as material military endeavors. They become specified and particularized as sites for white localities. Punitive performances, racialized punishment, capture, and discipline are entwined in the historical fabric of white supremacist social formations from conquest, chattel enslavement onward. White bodies and subjects exert the capacity to manifest authority and presence in places both do and do not physically occupy. Mark the card as occupy.
The text is just that nuclear power plants should be built on.
High socioeconomic areas.
So, who is the actor for that?
And we didn't specify one.
Okay, so
We're saying that that's what should happen.
that's what should happen. Do you claim to be able to solve for any of the impacts?
Well, we say that talking about this opens up the space to for more diverse wisdom and easing tensions.
Okay. Okay. What was on the criticism, the card that you read right before the Mandel card? And that's ensures co-option and no abolitionism,
Right.
that one? Okay, all right. So you say that we lead to this hijacking dissent in which white elites are able to control the movement and make it so that it only benefits like the white ideal, correct? What exactly about the 1AC and our intersectionality leads to this co-option of like hegemonic
Your
whiteness?
card, in particular, like the cards that you advocate, so
The Lazar
the
evidence.
Lazar evidence, right? It pretty much talks about how like feminist discourse is basically, like what feminist discourse basically did is it looked at other social movements and it was like, yeah, those things are awesome, and so we should say that those things, like, we can solve for those things via feminist discourse, right? So that's a hijacking of my movement if you say that, no, wait, because feminism or feminist discourse solves for the oppression that black and red bodies experience on a daily basis. It just doesn't, and anytime you try to advocate that people
So
or...
are minority bodies treated as lesser humans sometimes?
That's the argument coming
Okay.
out of the 1AC.
Are women treated as lesser humans?
Absolutely,
sometimes?
and the argument,
So
the argumentation is that your evidence, your feminist discourse, one discusses white women, or like this idea of white women, white children. Even if you try to claim this, like it magically solves for the thing is, it's like even if you say that white women and white children are marginalized, the argumentation is that people who are in the black body, i.e. black women, black children, are significantly marginal, like significantly more marginalized. And anytime you try to say that feminist discourse, that it tries to detach away from this standardized man, solves for
Okay, so you say that we need to prioritize a focus on race. What do you tell black women who want to be associated with the feminist movement?
that,
Our movement is better.
yeah.
Your movement is better? Okay.
Okay. Our representatives, the affirmative has to defend the United States federal government enacting and claim their endpoint of advocacy. This first, the central government in D.C. This can be used to you. The terms for an example of the resolution should be the endpoint of the affirmative. Their couple net benefits to the interpretation of recent vote -1 epistemology D8. The question of the act is truth claim can't be tested by the negative because they are not adequately prepared to answer the question from the act. There are switch sides on an issue also leads to groupthink phenomenon that leads to voting on an argument like case waste locality, and that should be a reason why fairness waste locality, and two limits the aid, allowing the affirmative interpretation is unlimited. Anything can happen when you relate to the topic, and this makes it possible. Shively says the agreement on the topic of choice is the thing that makes deliberation possible. This makes negative entirely reactionary divorce from the act discussion. And three, switch side debate on the topic of devoting. I should say that learning both sides of the issue are necessary for you to become better advocates. It is unlikely that the contested debate will have any real meaningful impact on anyone's lives to be garnered from anyone, any type of education. However, specific training debate provides teachers level of critical thinking is not possible in the classroom, and their interpretation is necessary with lapses. This potential by making this debate with negative argument on the act without having to defend the other side and a topical version of the act is all by their offense, even if it doesn't. The going negative would avoid all their offense. Resolutions are written to ensure a balance of arguments. There wasn't a problem. The resolution would be an unbalanced one, which would disadvantage negative. She says that we need to advocate she says that she needs her interpretation. You don't, because you don't actually advocate the United States federal government doing an action. That's our interpretation. And anti-systemic alternatives block collective action and reinforce police control. The standard for the claim for recognition of the separate political spaces demonstrates the limits of radical claims to rejection of the formal political sphere, leaves political struggle isolated from any sheer framework of democratic accountability. This rejection of social mediation can only further legitimize the narrowing of the political sphere to a small circle of unaccountable elites. The only alternative to political games threaten to take our ball home. Powers can't be sleeping in their beds. And she says her counter-interpretation to defend the resolution, but that's not reasonable and unlimiting. Allow the act to select a different way of affirming the resolution makes it meaningless. Action from the resolution in an infinite amount of ways and get advantages off these affirmations. And it's extra topical. The advantages claimed are based on the way the resolution is affirmed, not the resolution itself. This makes the resolution meaningless and allows an infinite amount of unpredictable advantages in the voting issue and changes the agent of the resolution, which makes it unpredictable and changes the entire nature of the debate. And that's uniquely bad because then that checks back all your like we need evidence and your counter-interpretation, because you like your counter-interpretation is even worse than the fact that you don't actually meet our interpretation of what debate should be like. Because it's from a center of fairness. She says the top is patriarchal energy. The discussion of how to effectively use renewable energy is not uniquely patriarchal. That it's a discussion about how to effectively mobilize our world. Now you can critique the discourse, which you do, but you have to start from a topical resolution that the United States federal government creates an action. She says that she reads a couple of answers as to why switch side debate is good, but switch side debate is bad. But fair rules debate are keep ethics of quality. 1993 switch side debating how to fairness and equality players. The game should start out with equal advantage, and the rules should be constructed through how to provide unique advantage to us, how to be unequal opportunity of benefits to debate procedures and norms of evaluate fairness and equality, opportunities to highlight and clarify the concept of diffusion, and we control the key impact of in the famous question. There are other methods to solve for education. Their act talks about benefits. A debate are only accessed within the method. This means you can air negative, this can air negative 3 film. More political value system is trying to reflect success from multiple perspectives. Push debate is involves critical assessment of evaluation of argument too much. Grasping, we want to recognize how the concepts of others have discredited. We can do this. If we want about the arguments and concepts with living in them, we can mark it there. And she makes this argument about how like she makes this argument about like how the way the affirmative like the use in the United States federal government allows for patriarchy to happen. But this argument is just silly. We're asking you to defend the resolution. This isn't slavery or patriarchy or racism or anything else with questionable ethics. This is a pretty liberal topic that a bunch of people think is true. The process which our debate outweighs this argument encourages tolerance and respect for all viewpoints, which solves the disadvantage. Even if we know something is bad, debating the issue allows us to become better advocates. It seems like the abolitionists will have benefit from debating, but slavery has made them better advocates to challenge it. This basically means that the mechanism for counteracting patriarchy or counteracting the argumentation coming out of the 1AC it has to start somewhere. And the only way to effectively discuss all narratives and to have everybody's viewpoint is that if everybody sits at the table and decides that we're going to talk about energy effective policy or any topic for that matter, but everybody has to have a basic understanding of what the education that is supposed to be received is. When you do not advocate the United States as a resolution, we cannot determine that you're a specific. It ends up being bad, and it ends up leading to the exclusion of everyday narratives that they discuss coming out of it. When they see, she also makes this argument about two sides, that there's like two sides to debate, but no, we're not saying that there are two sides to debate. We're just saying that in order to have an effective discussion of how every aspect of feminist discourse, of black body discourse, of any type of discourse can happen, is that first there has to be a basic level of the basic level of fairness in order to make sure that those narratives actually take place in the sphere, whether it be debate or community-wise, and they just fail to do that because you don't advocate something that is like a rule of debate, and this is a priority issue, so it comes first. Like fairness outweighs because it's the competitive. Fairness is the essence of competitive activity because it provides a set of rules that are equal and allow anyone to compete. Debate is a game, and people won't play the game they see as rigged or unbalanced. And also, terms of education claims we can't test specifics of the act that leads us to accepting certain truths because they haven't religiously tested. Fairness is key to justice. We have an obligation to obey the rules as well. The concept of fairness relates to the right of dealing with persons who are cooperating or competing against one another when it speaks of fair games. That is practice fair when persons engaged can face only one and openly support their respective positions. It is the notion of this possibility of mutual acknowledgement which makes the concept of fairness fundamental to justice. You can mark right there. I'm sorry, I jumped around a bit. Sorry.
It was